Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight we have Janis Ian, and this is going to be coming from 1976 and it's going to be her live performance of At 17, and this was from the Old Grey Whistle test as well. So let's get Janis up on screen and see how she gets on.
I learned the truth at 17, that love was meant for beauty queens and high school girls with clear skin smiles who married young and then retired. The Valentines I never knew, the Friday night charades of youth were spent on one more beautiful. At 17 I learned the truth. And those of us with ravaged faces, lacking in the social graces, desperately remained at home, inventing lovers on the phone who called to say, "Come dance with me," and murmured vague obscenities. It isn't all it seems at 17. A brown-eyed girl in hand-me-downs, whose name I never could pronounce, said, "Pity please the ones who serve, they only get what they deserve." Rich relation hometown queen marries into what she needs with a guarantee of company and haven for the elderly. Remember those who win the game, they lose the love they sought to gain. Quality and dubious integrity. The small town eyes will gape at you in dull surprise when payment due exceeds accounts received at 17.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here before the acoustic guitar solo. I've been fortunate enough to teach students some Janis Ian in the past, and the amount of technique that absolutely flies under the radar with her playing. There are really subtle hammer-ons, pull-offs, but also just chord shapes in terms of barring across that whole guitar and always being so clear with it. Obviously here Janis is playing with that real low dynamic, so real soft picking here with the right hand, but absolutely just accompanying herself and absolutely selling the song just with her own guitar and her own voice. And talking about her voice, the way that she starts out, of course, she's a great storyteller, so she's got that natural ability to talk and sing at the same time and really connect with the audience through the song and through the lyrics, but also through her delivery of that vocal and leaning into the vocal a little bit more when the rest of the band come in, but then she's always got that option of rolling back to that more conversation style of singing, and that's what all great storytellers can do. And the great thing about this track musically is that not only is Janis playing so well with fingerstyle, she's a great fingerstyle player, and she can lay down a hell of a solo on acoustic guitar as well, which I've seen in the past. A lot of people might not know that about Janis, especially if they just listen to At 17, and especially in this case where they go away from Janis for that lead solo, but she can absolutely hold down a solo by herself. But this whole samba feel that we've got to the track and the progressive nature of the chords, it's not just a 4 or a 5 chord wonder here that's just going to be repeated throughout the whole track. We've got some really cool progressions that start off really major based, but then getting into more of the chorus part of the track, then we're going into more minor based stuff, which is such a great contrast and just keeps it such an interesting journey throughout the whole song. And this track that was released released in 1975, actually won Janis a Grammy, and that was for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. And the great thing about that is being in that class of a pop vocal performance, it means that Janis beat a lot of pop stars at the time in order to win that Grammy. So it must have been great at the time to actually have someone like Janis winning that award ahead of others who maybe didn't play an instrument or maybe weren't as well-rounded musicians as Janis was, but it's great that Janis got that recognition. Janis wasn't always Janis Ian. She was actually born Janis Eddie Fink and then changed her name to Janis Ian, just using her brother's middle name as her surname. Another interesting thing about this song in particular is that Janis wrote it after reading an article about an 18-year-old who thought that going to a prom and that kind of event would improve her life afterwards, kind of finding a partner and all that kind of stuff. And the way that Janis performs it and introduces it here, she very much relates it to her own life, saying this is a story from my life. And that's the genius of storytellers and artists and songwriters like Janis. They can take something that they've read and maybe something that was somebody else's experience, but then tell it from their own point of view. So what Janis might have read in a small article, she can now take those tiny details and expand that into a whole story that is entwined with her own experiences and is relatable with everybody else who's experienced the same thing. And in the story that Janis read about, the woman was 18, as I mentioned earlier, so Janis has changed that to the age of 17, which again is one of those things that is going to make it so much more relatable, because at that age of 16 and 17, when you're just finishing school, over here in the UK, we don't have such a thing as a prom. Well, actually, we do now, but when I was back at school, we never used to have anything. You just finished school and that was it. Let's get back into the track.
To those of us who knew the pain of Valentines that never came, and those whose names were never called when choosing sides for basketball, it was long ago and far away, and the world was younger than today. Dreams were all they gave for free to ugly duckling girls like me. We all played the game when we dared to cheat ourselves at solitaire, inventing lovers on the phone, repenting of the lives unknown. They call and say, come dance with me, and murmur vague obscenities at ugly girls like me at 17.
And there we have it. Just a word on that acoustic guitar solo as well. Really nice, tasteful solo thrown in there. Another thing is the authenticity of this live performance when compared to the original record, which you can listen to on YouTube and just compare them, because they are so close in terms of the musical ability, but also the delivery that Janis provides live and in the studio. And the top artists, like I've mentioned before in other videos, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they just got in the studio and performed it. It wasn't weeks and weeks of overdubbing and auto-tune and all those kind of things. It was just set up in the studio, play it and record it. So back in the day, you used to get such a great live version of the original tracks because The original track was just set up in the studio. Another thing when you read about the life of Janis is that she started to play piano or have piano lessons at the age of 2. And it says that this was by her own request. And I've got a nephew who's 3 now, around 2 and 3, that kind of age. And I can't imagine trying to teach him piano because he can't really talk and he's just running around all the time. He's got quite good vocabulary for his age, but at the age of 2, maybe Janis was just a really focused 2-year-old who could actually take in information and start actually practicing and playing. But at the age of 2, that is so early to start playing a musical instrument. And by her teenage years, she was playing the organ, the harmonica, the French horn, as well as guitar. So she's always had that interest in music and playing musical instruments. And by the age of 14, this is where she actually wrote her big hit, which was called Society's Child, Baby, I've Been Thinking. And for me, this is a classic example of a singer-songwriter, the way that Janis at the age of 14 is writing about something that is thought-provoking, because the track was about an interracial relationship and the fact that it was frowned upon by so many people, and the girl's mother who was in that relationship, and also teachers as well. So it's really looking at some deep issues and some deep social situations that you wouldn't normally get in a song. Normally, yeah, flowers and rainbows and all that kind of stuff, and everyone's feeling happy, but then hearing a song that actually makes you think. This would have been 1965, so it's not the kind of time where everybody was talking openly about these issues and these social situations, and because of that, a lot of radio stations actually banned the track and didn't play it. But even though that was the case, that she wasn't getting the exposure from those radio stations, in 1967, it had sold over 500,000 copies. And in 2001, that track was put into the Grammy Hall of Fame, where they honor timeless tracks that were really important and are really important to the music industry. And from 1967 onwards, Janis might have had that stigma of being a one-hit wonder, whereas in 1975, she absolutely dropped the hammer with this track at 17. And that was from her album, which was called Between the Lines. And that album was #1 on the Billboard album charts, but also went on to sell over 1 million copies in the USA alone. And from 1982 to 1992, Janis continued to write, and she also set up her own record label, which was called Rude Girl Records. And Janis is one of these people that's quite outspoken about the music industry, and she did say some comments in regard to the RIAA, which is the Recording Industry Association of America, where she said that it's not really geared towards the artists, and it's something that I've mentioned in other videos about how I feel about the music industry, that it is very much a business-run thing and it's not really about the art. And I think Janis is just thinking along those same lines. And because of the way that she feels about the industry, on her website she has released several albums that are free to download, so people don't even have to pay for them. She's just doing it for the art and for the love of making music. So she is a true artist. Fantastic musician as well, just a great player and a great singer, but she's got those core beliefs of just producing art and giving it to people, hoping to connect with a few people out there, and just really does do it for that connection with people, and it's not at all about the money. Another interesting thing about Janis is that she's into science fiction, and she writes as well, science fiction, but also fan fiction. I know that she did something on Star Trek, and fan fiction is when you write your own stories on the topic of something that already exists, but she occasionally attends science fiction conventions as well. Another thing is that Janis took acting lessons in the 1980s in order to help her on stage, being in front of a lot of people. So it just goes to show that Janis was not only just a great singer, a great musician as well, she knew all of the aspects that you needed to put together in order to perform well. So she felt that she needed to do something just to help her a little bit on stage. So that's why she took those lessons. But Janis Ian, a great singer-songwriter and also storyteller, and a great guitar player as well. That might fly under the radar unless you've listened to a lot of her stuff, and unless you play yourself and have worked out some of her stuff, you'll realize how much there is going on. But thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at. Keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!